Arden or take it away from SK for sure.
We'll have to see. I mean, what are you expecting out of the draft from Dynasty as well, Bacon? Because they have a very specific style, right?
Yeah, I think Grace is definitely going to be a hero that will get a lot of attention in this game because we saw, obviously, the weapon Grace try to come out from SK, fell kind of flat, but it was Dynasty that were the first team to run the Captain Grace, and it worked out amazingly for them.
It certainly did, and that's been a common theme, that Captain Grace working amazingly for teams. Grumpjaw and Baron going to be the first bans, and Lyra the first lock-in. So relatively standard draft so far.
Yeah, and that's what they did actually yesterday on A side. They actually first picked Lyra and then picked up Idris later if it was open for Dynasty. So here, if they pick Arden or Grace, Lyra is actually decent and works well into both those heroes. So SK is going to go ahead with the Grace. I think here they may potentially ban Koshka. Actually, they're going to ban Blackfeather, which is interesting because they actually can play a Blackfeather pretty well. So Dynasty here will most likely ban either Idris to not give it to at Grace because that combo is really strong.
I just hope that it is going to be a Captain Grace this time. I hope SK learned their lesson from yesterday, but you never know. This is a team that likes to really try and push the envelope, try and shake things up a bit.
I mean, it could well be something that's worked a lot in scrims, and we haven't seen it work particularly well here on the stream, but I'm more than willing to be proven wrong, right? I'm more than willing to see something really come into its own and blow the minds of everyone. We'll have to wait and see, though. Obviously, a lot of other power picks still on the table. Things like the Batiste has been a terror in the jungle. I'll be curious to see if that's going to be a focus for the ban, or whether they do want to focus on
Yeah, surprisingly, EU has not played a lot of Batiste, even though in NA it's been banned or picked usually a little more often. So I think here, Vox, Idris are probably the two big ones, or even Samuel potentially. They want to deny Tyrus that Samuel. So they're going to ban Koshka, which is very interesting because SK doesn't really play Koshka that well, but I can see why, because Grace and Koshka are actually an extremely strong duo together.
And it could be that Dynasty knows more than we do. Maybe Tyrus has been practicing that Koshka just to use that with the synergy of Grace. There's a lot of things like that that do happen behind the scenes. But with the Koshka ban, Bacon, what are you expecting for these final 4 picks?
I would love to see Idris come out for the side of SK. And just Idris Grace is such a strong duo, very similar to Idris Koshka. In just you let the Idris jump in, do his damage. When he would normally get blown up, you just throw a holy shield on him, heal him up, and he's able to just stick in this fight that much longer and get that much more damage out.
Yeah, but I think Vox would be a better pick for SK because honestly, Vox is good into Grace because he's mobile, he can jump around her. So they're actually going to take Batiste, actually. So now Vox will be open. Vox will probably be taken by Dynasty here, and potentially Samuel is a good pick because of the constant slows that he can provide against a Grace diving in. So instead, they're going to actually take Idris right here and potentially Samuel to round out the pick.
It just does work quite well into Grace as well, has the ability to jump out of her stuns, but when you combo with the Batiste, this is a duo and a composition that we are very familiar with on the desk. We've been actually running this quite a bit, but it is going to be Samuel and then a Kestrel to round it out. And
definitely, it's very different, our experience with the composition, to what the pros are actually going to be able to do with this. So now, looking at these compositions, now that we're kind of locked into this is looking like one of those weapon power Kestrels going into the lane once again. That's been creeping on into the meta. How are we feeling about the 2 drafts here? What are our thoughts on the final compositions that have come out?
Yeah, I think both drafts are pretty even. It's going to come down to execution. However, I do like Dynasty's draft a little better because Lyra can portal in and engage onto the Kestrel. And I think that with how SK's draft work is they need Grace to go in and the Kestrel and Batiste to basically lock someone down. And Idris is very mobile. They need to basically get onto Samuel.
So for Dynasty then, what are the win conditions going to be in this game?
Well, for Dynasty, they have to just, like Sweet just said, just engage onto that Kestrel, try and blow up the Kestrel, try and blow up the Batiste. They're both very squishy, so they will have the opportunity to do so, but I actually prefer the SK draft because there is so much lockdown potential. You know, yeah, there's a lot of mobility from Idris, but if Ordained goes onto him and he tries to jump out of it, he's getting stunned. You then are going to be just blown up by Grace and Kestrel in an instant. I love this combination. that SK have picked up.
So quite a lot then down to how well this team can use their reflex blocks and how they can actually avoid the correct CC in these fights, because the second that you do get locked down, you're not going to be going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of combo potential with if they initiate first, I think SK is going to win the fight, because with their Ordain and with Keshel's burst, they can definitely trap Idris or Samuel in that Ordain and do a lot of work there.
All right, well, with that in mind, it's just about time to get on into our first game of today. Before we do, make sure to get involved on Twitter. Use that hashtag Vainglory8. Let us know who you're going to be supporting today and across the rest of the games today as well. But with that, let's hand over to game number 1.
Thank you very much, Munch. And this is an incredibly exciting series, because not only do we have Dynasty Gaming going up against SK Gaming to try and secure a finalist position this week here, AJ, but both these compositions are incredibly strong.
Yeah, they really are. There's a lot of power picks that manage to get through. Sure, we don't see Baron and Grumpjaw, but, you know, can't have everything. I think, you know, I'm especially curious to see how this Captain Grace does. We've seen it once before. It was actually ran by Dynasty, and that did very well. It has not done quite as well from the jungle. So Mowgli should, at the very least, know how to play against this. Obviously, Captain Grace does operate a little differently, has very different power spikes. Lyra, well understood at this point, having been out for a while. Very good at pressuring the lane, and I think probably with the Idris here, that's something they might consider doing. Rukumeza should be able to deal with a lot of the pressure that comes out of Grace Baptiste, though, just by virtue of the fact that he can sort of keep his distance, get some good sustain up with Corrupted Genius.
And I think you could kind of argue that perhaps there was a bit of an outdrop, but we'll talk about it in a second, as Rukumez is all by himself and he's taking so much harass. Here comes Mowgli, here comes PT Lamb, the seal is there, but it's not enough. First blood's going to go over to Raph, and now Dynasty are in a terrible position, because this is just going to be PT Lamb losing his life, the snowball continuing, and SK going to gain 2 for themselves.
We've seen a few times, actually, over the course of yesterday and now today, it begins the contest of the Elder Treant when it really is not a good idea. I understand that Rukumeza has a great deal of range, and with the Drifting Dark and Malice and Verdict, he has good damage too. It makes sense that he wants to contest there. Problem is that Grace has a slow attached to her heroic perk, and she applies that heroic perk every time she uses her A, her Benediction. It's also one of the longest range dashes in the game. So basically, when you go up and you do that, Grace jumps on you, she slows you, that lets Tyrus close the gap, and he's level 2, he's got Ordain. You're not going to get away from that, right? Like, you have to think about what tools are available to your opponents. There's nothing Rukumeza can do against that combo.
Especially when Mowgli was in the lane and was very content in being in the lane. There was just absolutely nothing. Now look at SK's positioning. They have rotated instantly to the backs, and they're going to start contesting them. We do see the entirety of Dynasty porting back to base, so that they might be able to help out, but Rukumeza is in trouble, and that's going to be Ordain stunning him up. Rukumeza going very low. They're looking to try and find the kill, as Peachy Lamb will jump onto Tyra's, but Dynasty need to pick a target, and they need to be as one here, or else they're just not going to get anything. A healing camp goes the way of SK, and a second one will go their way as well, as Tyra's going to put the pressure onto Rukumeza, and he's just trying to dance on the side of this Ordained. Tyra's going low. They have healing, but look at where PT Lamb is. He's given up. This is just 2 versus 3. Mowgli trying to escape, but the bad mojo will hit him in the butt, and that's going to be a 3rd kill to SK.
Oh man, Baptiste, only you can do 240 burst damage at level 3. With basically no items. That was ridiculous. He had 2 crystal bits, and he was hitting 241 with that bad mojo. Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit again. Similar kind of situation where contesting is probably not wise. You know, it was a little bit easier to try and make a case there, but only if PT Lamb stays, and he definitely did not. He went all the way to take back camps. I can understand why you would make that decision. But it needs to be a team decision. Like, you need to back up with your other 2 guys and just kind of, like, not fully commit. Try and just dissuade your opponents from going back and stopping PT Lamb from taking the backs. Don't commit to fighting them. Do not have the members to make it happen. Also,
PT Lamb, ooh, bit of poke. Does go down to
Alright.
half HP.
Yeah, he's gonna be able to get out of there. So also the other thing to consider when you're fighting against a Grace is that nowhere is safe. Like nowhere is safe. That dash is way too long range for you to stand in that bush across the wall and feel safe. Like she will be able to follow up. The knockup was great. I honestly haven't seen that many big knockups from Graces yet in the Vainglory8, but that was probably the first one that was super impactful. It was really, really effective. I feel like Dynasty need to, and it might be a bit too late to commit to whatever plan they originally had, but they should have committed to this plan to begin with. They should have just said, all right, Rikimeza, you're going to have to play scared a little bit, right? Like, we're going to focus on using Lyra the way she's most effective in this comp, which is sticking with PT Lamb in the lane, being kind of obnoxious to Kvalifar, keeping PT Lamb safe. Because, yeah, PT Lamb, especially before Divergent Paths comes online, is going to be in a bit of a dicey position up there, so... Yeah,
Rikimeza
Ordain
in trouble once
again.
more. This is, I would actually argue the opposite, but this is just from personal experience that I wanted to kind of talk about the fact that perhaps there was an outdraft from SK with the Batiste into Samuel. It seems to be a fairly consistent counter to the likes of Sky and Samuel because you can out-damage them at range, and if a fight does break out, especially when you have a Grace and a Batiste on the same side, then the ability to turn that fight around instantly with the usage of Grace's knock-up and Fearsome Shade is there for SK. It allows Kvalifar easy positioning because he's the one who's going to be dived upon by the Idris. And so from that point of view, you're likely going to have a lot of pressure put onto your Samuel just through the fact that Tyra's already counters the Samuel on a Batiste, and with a Grace it means, like you've said, nowhere is safe for Rikimeza to go. So potentially bad moves by Mowgli, not necessarily recognizing who's going to be the most vulnerable hero on his composition, and already this gold deficit that's gone, it's not apparent because PT Lamb is trying to keep up in farm, and he's actually done a fantastic job of out farming Kvalifar by 30. But when you look at the difference in jungle to jungle, it's a huge experience deficit, 2 whole levels, almost 20 CS there, and when it's in jungle and it's 2 levels, that's huge.
I absolutely agree, and it's not that I don't disagree that Mowgli should probably be helping Rikimeza. I just don't think that's their plan. Like, based on how they played in the early game, it seemed like Mowgli's plan was to play this sort of traditional Lyra lane harassment style, which, you know, that may not be correct, but it doesn't really matter in this game. In a vacuum, like, the strategy Dynasty has committed to or had committed to was very much lane centric.
Yep.
And you know, once you start committing to a plan, if you suddenly back out of that and it's too late, you're just going to end up being at a deficit everywhere on the map, right?
Yeah.
Like, PT Lamb could probably be further ahead if he had just gone to lane immediately. Like, never tried to fight at all in the jungle and never tried to help there. So, yeah, I think that's one thing to consider for sure. I do think that this is a bit of a dicey draft. Like, the Batiste is extremely good into the Samuel, right? You talked about that. It's not just good, though, because you, like, outrange with damage, etc., etc. The big thing is that how can you use Drift and Guard? Like, one of Samuel's most critical abilities is just shut down by Ordained, and also the Batiste synergizes beautifully well with the Grace, right? Like, because if you're stuck inside of an Ordain, that is about the sort of surface area of the circle, right? Of the knock-up from Grace. So there's no real way to avoid CC. You either take a stun and then a knock-up, or you just take a knock-up, and you've got to stand your ground and fight, which, you know, Samuel is really bad at doing. This is comprehensively, you know, a composition that does very well into a Samuel. Now, the Idris might be the sort of saving grace here. I do see windows for him to be effective, but I don't think the damage is there on the side of Dynasty to deal with Grace's crazy protection and sustain. Lyra, I think, is not going to be as effective because, you know, she has very sustained sustain, right? Like, it's over the course of a fight, she can heal very effectively, whereas Grace will stop that burst and counteract that. That's what's going to be very effective against someone like an Idris, who does pretty high sustained damage. Samuel, who does, you know, pretty high sustained damage. If you burst heal, you know, it really shuts that down. Look at the burst on the side of SK, though. You know,
Yeah.
Speaking of the alternative, Mowgli will not have time to get multiple rotations of his heal off, most likely. And as a result, I don't think the Lyra is going to be as effective as she would like to be either. Not to mention, Bulwark, what does Bulwark do in this? It just deals with Raph's dash. And he can wait for that to wear off whilst there's an Ordained on the target and just walk up. So, compositionally, it's going to be a struggle for Dynasty. They're playing from a deficit at the beginning of this game.
They are, and I would actually like to see Mowgli stack health at this point, try and get those sigils healing as much as possible. It will deal with the fact that Raph will have a huge heal on his ultimate, the Divine Intervention. If Peter Lam was to dive on top of Kvalifar, likely the person he would look for and try and blow up this Kestrel. If that's to fail, the Divine Intervention comes out, Kvalifar's healed almost back to full, and that's where you kind of need to contest the sustained heal that the team from SK can put out, or perhaps the burst heal is what I'm looking for. You just see a Crucible come out, and that's going to be very important in dealing with some of these engage tools that are there, specifically that fearsome shade. But look at Mowgli, he's just walked straight into Kvalifar, and Kvalifar's just going to chunk him right on down. Sigil will pop to give him movement speed, but now not only does Mowgli have to keep his 2 carry and jungle alive, but he has to heal himself, and this turret is taking a beating. It's an engage from SK. Raph in trouble. Fearsome Shade goes out, does push Mowgli back. PT Lamb will take a one-shot. It is not going to be a turret falling, and there's the heals coming out. They're just not quite enough to heal everyone up, but Oblivion will fly, and Crucibled up. Mowgli is just right out of position. He goes in, and he gets ordained, and it's going to be SK finishing this job off. The turret will fall, and the gold lead progresses to more, and it's Rikomeza being stunned, but he will be let free. SK 4-0.
This is a rough spot to be in. I mean, there's really no easy way of engaging with the Lyra, and as I said, it doesn't really shut down the enemy's engage either. So kind of a rough pick into this composition. Mowgli was trying to make the best out of a bad situation. It may have worked if someone had missed their reflex block or something on the Oblivion, but as it stands, very hard to find openings for Dynasty, and honestly, SK is playing their composition really well. They're focusing on poke, and if a fight breaks out, well, Grace just shuts it down, lets them reposition, lets them get into the right spot to deal the damage. Also, PT Lamb, I was about to say prior to that fight, he's just got Divergence Pass. That's really important so that he can blink out of, for example, the perk of Wrath, make sure that he can stay in the right bits of the fight and not get slowed up. But he's not there yet. He needs one more item to really threaten anyone on the side of SK Gaming. There's too much sustain, etc. It's good that he got the Div. Oh, Tyrus.
Yeah, Tyrus is caught out a little bit. Rikomeza trying to find the kill, and it will be a trade, jungler for jungler here.
That's a good trade.
Can PT Lamb find any more? Oh, great dodge of that stun. The active camo, PT Lamb dodges it perfectly. It doesn't look like they want to continue fighting. I'm not sure if that's the correct move, really, from Dynasty. Cooldowns on Idris can be long. I think that could have been an opportunity to try and
that definitely was an opportunity. Sure, your cooldowns are long, but mostly your basic attack against Weapon Idris, and they had Arcane Passage to get right on top of Kvalifar. They're going now.
They're going to go for it now, and they might just find Kvalifar instantly. Yep, that was overstay from SK, really. Your Dynasty recognized that the window was there.
That was a nice pick by Dynasty. I think maybe they could have made it earlier and found 2, or at the very least forced Raph lower so he can defend turret. But as it stands, this is a window, right? They can get some push onto the turret. It's pretty hard for Tyrus by himself to shove this wave because the splash radius on bad Mojo is actually quite small. I like the fear though.
That could have been crucibled. It maybe Mowgli's thinking, oh, I don't need to block it because we get the turret anyway, but the minion wave did get eaten up by a single bad Mojo. I just kind of feel like at this point, what are you holding onto the Crucible for? Are you going to be looking for a fight in the next minute? Probably not. If you look at the fact that PT Lamb and Rikomeza have gone to the backs here to get gold and experience, then it says to me Dynasty would have been wasted anything.
Yeah, I mean, at this, right when I'm saying this, they probably would have had, 10 seconds left on Crucible? So it would have only really made sense if they were going to contest the shop/gold mine, which it doesn't look like they were even considering, which I think is smart, because they know that SK would have gotten back to that area, so... Yeah, I agree. Why not? Why not use it and maybe try and convert that turret into a pick as well? Tyrus and Raph were there, and they'd been poked a decent amount. We're starting to get towards the mid-game, though, Dyansty, and this is when things can really change in surprising ways sometimes. PT Lamb has hit a 3rd item. I like that he went for the Tornado trigger. just trying to, chunk down people before it's too late.
Mowgli has gone forward, but he's losing a lot of his health bar. Look at PT Lamb getting feared up. He's struggling to escape, and the Ordained will take him on out. That's just going to be SK charging forward. Raph trying to set up, but that's that B ability again from the Grace. If teams don't want to fight you, then it's so hard to connect it.
Yeah, there was a lot of disengaged crowd control. That's one of the stunts of Mowgli.
Mowgli is trying to heal himself up. That's going to be him going down, it seems. No, he manages to just use the minion wave perfectly, and the one-shot will be eaten by Rukameza to keep him healthy. Incredible. Fountain's going to be popped for Crystal Sentry here. That's going to be Crystal Sentry going down, but
I like how Rukameza
SK felt like they had to. Yeah.
So, okay, I mean, let's unpack that a little bit, because there's a few interesting things that happened. First things first, you gotta realize how insane the disengage is from SK Gaming. This is one of the reasons why Lyra is, as we mentioned before, kind of struggling. When you jump on top of the SK comp, what happens? Well, active camo might be there. Grace's B ability is an option, and it's very easy to land in that situation. There's an Ordained and a Fear. Those are, like, you can only Crucible 2 of those. Like, they might stack some of those, they realistically probably will. But there's only so much you can deal with. PT Lamb caught out again.
He is. PT Lamb will just get blown up. You know, the issue with Idris, right, is that his blink seems a little bit inconsistent sometimes. If you are trapped in an Arden Gauntlet, per se, AJ, you can use your Shroud Step to jump over the walls of that and escape it. But when you're caught in an Ordained, you can't use your Shroud Step to jump over that. And I'm not sure if that's I'm not sure how that works. I haven't quite worked it out yet. I've been trying to do some research into it, but it does mean that PT Lamb cannot escape. This Kraken going low. Ooh, Master Verdicts do a lot of damage, but Kavalafa just kept everyone at bay there, and now SK's going to get the heal and the Kraken as well.
Yeah, that is a bit of an issue with your dash there on PT Lamb. Honestly, in the situation he was in, the answer is just to immediately ult and wait for your team and try and maybe set something up off the back. You can't try and escape other ways, because it's just not going to happen. Like, there's too much crowd control on the side of SK Gaming. Right now, though, Kraken pushing in here. There's a window for Dynasty. You know, they managed to make some things happen. It's kind of fallen by the wayside here. They got to be very careful. A fight would be a good opportunity here as PT Lamb flanks.
Yeah, they're going straight on in. PT Lamb's onto Tyrus. Tyrus taking a lot of damage. There's the Ordained Walls, but it's going to be PT Lamb just finishing him off over the wall. Gets the kill. Now they're going for Kavalafa. He just about escapes with a Crucible coming out, but Raph, he's not likely to find it, and that's going to be PT Lamb escaping away before the knockout comes through. Here's that opportunity that Dynasty so desperately needed. They're going to take down this Kraken before they lose their choke point turret and really cut the losses that what that could have become.
So that was the example of a fight going well for Dynasty that, you know, you can kind of theory beforehand. You have to get on top of Tyrus, right? He's the only member you can really easily stick on top of. And you have to kill him before that ult comes down, which barely, I mean, very barely PT Lamb was able to do. It's all about stutter stepping, getting the maximum amount of DPS down. You know, Tyrus is going to struggle in a situation like that, especially once you have individual reflex blocks as well as the Crucible, so you can deal with his fear for the disengage and get through something else like an active camo stun or Dane. Dynasty did buy themselves back into this game a little bit off the back of that fight. They're only 1,000 gold behind. PT Lamb, if he can, you know, do that kind of damage, if he can find that window and flank and be able to get onto a carry at the onset of a fight, it is winnable for Dynasty, right? Like, the problem is that if they engage straight up, Mowgli just ports in and everyone is on top of each other, then you're guaranteed going to get hit by too much crowd control to do anything.
And the ability for PT Lamb to blow up someone like Tyrus is being enabled by the fact that his third item here is a Tornado Trigger. You know, there's so many different options for Idris. Wow, that is a weapon-powered Glimmer Shot right there. Yeah. There's so many opportunities for potential builds for Idris, and he's decided to go this Tornado Trigger. What it gives is crit and attack speed, which means he can sustain the damage. A fight's got to break out here as Mowgli dives in the middle of the fight. Raph goes through the walls the other way, and Mowgli just gets destroyed before he even uses his fountain. This is disastrous for Dynasty, as PT Lamb cannot escape that Ordain. 2 down, 1 to go. Rickameza going to be tagged by the one-shot. 800 HP on a weapon power Kestrel. It just seems ridiculous. Dynasty have lost their front line, and now Rickameza is going to be struggling to hold the base.
So that was kind of a bold arcane passage for a couple of reasons. The first and most obvious after that fight being that, oh, Rickameza, dun, should be able to get it. The first and most obvious being that you can't actually follow Mowgli there, right? Like, you just can't. If you try and go through the portal, you're right on top of the CC, so you have to wait, okay? So you wait, and then when you go in, it's too late because your captain's already dead, and then you're in a bad spot and you have nowhere to run, no movement available to you, so you end up going back through the portal, back away from the fight, pretty much regardless of if you want to. I think that was a very, very poor engage from Dynasty. They had an opportunity to come back into this game, but after losing a couple of turrets there and struggling so much in that fight, I'm not so sure it's going to happen. It really does rely on someone misplaying or being out of position, which SK have only shown themselves to do once or twice this game. Kraken is able to be leveraged here, maybe.
Yeah, it's going to be an engage from Raph. Look at PT Lamb already low. Mowgli, he is in the middle of the fight. This time he's surviving. That's going to be a crucible, but he goes down and the fountain was not quick enough to save his life. He was caught in the fear from that fearsome shade. Havalafa goes low. Fountain will bring him back up to full HP. There is an opportunity, I think, for Dynasty to try and contest this. I don't know if they'll go for it. It is very risky, but with an Idris and a Samuel, you certainly have the damage to do it. You just have to set up perfectly and really find your shots.
Well, the thing is, Divine Intervention was on cooldown if they chased immediately after that, and they probably could have picked someone, or tried to contest Kraken. But because of the overdrive on Benediction, Raph is getting his cooldowns up really quick, and he used his ultimate around where that scout trap is by the camp by sentry, walked over to Kraken, and by the end of Kraken, his ultimate was back up. That's ridiculous. Like, that was way too fast. You needed to capitalize on that window to do anything there. Now, with Kraken pushing in and only 2 turrets left, Dynasty's in a really rough spot. They need to make a pretty snappy decision for an engagement here, and they really need to be cohesive as a unit, get the good Crucible down onto probably the Fear, and try and pick one of the carries fast. It's the only option.
Okay, let's see if Dynasty can find a fight before they lose their base here. There they go, straight on to Kavalafa. He's going very low. Oh, great Shimmer Strike, and that's going to be the kill going over to PD Lamb. Mowgli, Fountain saves his life, and Tyrus is going to go down next, it seems, as everyone's on top of him. The Ordain won't do anything. They've done it, Dynasty. They pull the trigger, and this time Mowgli survives to tell the tale. Another Kraken defended.
This is exactly what we were talking about, right? Like, they need to just go in and pop a carry. They did that on Kavalafar. They also had a really good Crucible there, stopped the Fear from being effective. PT Lamb was playing slightly split from the rest of his team. He went around a bit like the flank. He went through the portal and then blinked immediately. That allows him to actually be in position to not get hit by, for example, the Grace B too easily, because, you know, obviously Kavalafar has to move, and that means that PT Lamb can actually leave that area. It was a good fight from Dynasty, but they still lost a turret, right? So they're 1 turret left. It's about half health. That is not a great spot to be in. They need to play flawlessly from this point on if they want to be able to win this one. But again, as I've said a few times, it's possible. It's a very thin line, right? Like, they've really got to be careful in these fights.
Yeah, and PT Lamb needs to be making sure that his reflex block is used pretty much exclusively for escaping Ordains, so he can escape the prison that is placed down. As the way Ordained works, as I recheck my facts, is it's all about the area rather than the walls of the Ordained. And it's when you leave the area, that's when you get stunned. So that's why Idris can't blink out of it. Another fight going to break out, and SK diving straight on in. It's going to be PT Lamb jumping away, does get stunned, and it's going to be the Fear blocked up. Can they turn this fight around? They need to go aggressive here. They can't keep running away, because Tyras will just pop them right down. Mowgli, the main target. PT Lamb's going to dive forward, looking for Kavalafa. There is that Shimmer Strike, but he gets blown up. And now it's all on Rickameza and Mowgli to keep this game alive for Dynasty. Raph charging forward. Rickameza putting the work down. They get the speed. They take the damage, though. And it seems like SK will give up flight. The Kraken, though, should be ready for the taking.
that was a winnable fight, Dyansty. I'm going insane. They just needed to commit to it a little bit earlier. PT Lamb was in actually a really good position to just turn and fight. Mowgli could have backed him up with a heal, and Rickameza could actually have moved north and gone through the portal to have a great side, like, flank position. You would not have been able to AoE crowd control them past the beginning of that one. Here comes another fight, though.
Yeah, they're looking to contest, but when Rickameza just gets blown up that quickly, that is not going to be anything here for the side of Dynasty. And actually, I'm surprised that SK aren't just looking to finish the game straight off that. I don't think they need the Kraken. 44 seconds, they could have charged into the base. They would have arrived just as PT Lamb spawned in a 2v3. I just don't think that they would have defended. But with the Kraken taken, it's going to be a slightly less risky, slightly more stable play from SK. But I wonder if Rickameza will spawn in time to try and save the day once more.
For all intents and purposes, the game has been won by SK here. It would really require a miracle for Dynasty to defend. I don't see how they make that happen, but let's go. Let's make the fight.
Yeah. Let's go. They need to dive forward. They need to go for the fight now. They need to dodge Raph as he goes in for the engage. It's all these things and more, but the turret has already gone down. SK are going for this. Here's Rickameza, and they're looking to try and get onto Kavalifar. No, they're going for Tyras. Kavalifar's all the way at the back. Where's PT Lamb? He was getting an infusion all the way back. It was the fearsome shade, I think, that pushed him there, and that is SK just waltzing right in and stealing away the Vein Crystal. Game 1 goes to them.
Very solid stuff from SK Gaming. They used Grace perfectly, but I also think that Dynasty need to adapt how they play into a comp like this. You got to be focusing on things like, you know, having multiple angles, flanking. There's directional shield out of Grace you got to consider. Let's see what they do in Game 2, Dyansty. I'm excited to see if they can come back here.
Well, SK, yesterday, drafts on the A side was super strong. So it's going to be a tough path forward. Let's throw it back, though, to our desk to break down this Game 1.
Thank you very much, guys. What a Game 1 it was. SK certainly living up to their reputation right now, living up to their Day 1 performance as well. Coming into Day 2, I mean, just phenomenal play coming out of them. And the Kestrel damage, like, what was that?
Well, that's what you can do when you have a Grace on the team. It allows you to build so much more offensively. They didn't even need defense on the Kestrel because if anyone happened to get onto the back lines, then they just blew them up with the damage, and Grace just throws down a heal onto whichever target was getting focused, and they're able to win the fights.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at the draft as well, the Grace and Batiste as alongside this weapon power, Kestrel just doing so much damage. So, like, when you're going up against this composition, it's very difficult to kind of sustain against the sheer damage coming out from these guys.
Yeah, and again, just the amount of burst damage that came through. There was a couple times, you know, we were talking about how Dynasty needs to get onto the backlines, onto one of these squishy heroes and blow them up, but they just didn't have the ability to do so because as soon as they did get onto the backlines and try and blow someone up, Grace was there to provide either the directional Holy Shield or the full Holy Shield, depending on if she was able to use her A or her ult. And so it's just a lot of really strong power within that composition for SK.
Absolutely. Well, we are going to be able to have a little bit of a closer look at this game. Obviously, very early in the game, SK managed to get themselves to a very good start. And SweetJ is standing by to run us through actually what happened during that early game to get us to that point. So, SweetJ, if you are ready, I will pass it over to you in just a second. I think he's just getting himself ready to talk us through the clip itself. But just to give you guys a little bit of context, so right at the very start of the game, we saw Rickameza actually trying to contest, I think it was for the Elder Tree right at the start of the game. And he ended up in kind of a 2v1 and the rest of his team tried to filter in. It got a little bit messy for them, is safe to say. And we'll see, we'll be able to kind of explain that in a little bit more detail. But I mean, what were your thoughts about like how SK kind of set up for this play at the start of the game and how they managed to turn that into more as well throughout the game?
It was just, I mean, they used their early game power. They had so much early game strength with this combo. And, you know, Samuel, we talk about how he is strong early, but only once he hits level 2. Yeah. Prior to that, he can struggle in that situation.
Okay, and we are ready to take a closer look. So I'll pass it over to SweetJ now.
Hello, everybody. One part I want to talk about is the early game. It was a very crucial point. If you guys look here, this is a key point where we see Raph with Tires on this Elder Treant, and you see Riku starts coming down here. He's going to farm his era, and then he's going to contest this. But look at the timing of when he contests this and why this wasn't the best decision coming from Riku here. So let's go ahead and roll the feed here. And you can see here, Baptiste is going to take the Elder Treant. And when that happens, you need to back off immediately. So he basically uses his Drifting Dark, tries to contest it, gets actually stunned. And when he gets stunned, he takes damage. So that only does the Ordain does damage, but when he then he breaks the tether, so to speak, and he takes the stun damage. He takes additional damage. Then Grace is also going to be on top of him, and it hits a Retribution attack. And watch Baptiste and his empowerment. Once he gets empowered, he's going to throw a Mojo onto Samuel here, and watch his health meter just completely drop. So we're going to roll it from here. And look at the damage. So he's going to hit one more time, and he's going to throw another Mojo. And look at the damage that does. It does twice the ability damage once he's empowered, once Baptiste is empowered. This is why Baptiste and Grace are so strong early. And the mistake here, PT Lamb should not have rotated down from lane. It was already a lost fight because it was a 2v1. So instead of losing 2 kills, they should have just gave 1 kill. And because of that rotation, Baptiste actually gets a huge early game lead. He actually gets like over 10 CS ahead of the Samuel, and they continue to snowball, get the first turret within the 12-minute mark, and then the game just kind of snowballs from there. So back to you, Munch.
Yeah, thank you very much. So that was kind of how the game started, and all a bit disjointed from Dynasty. But Tasty, like, talk us through what else happened throughout the game.
Yeah, it was also just really good use of crowd control. There's so much lockdown potential between Ordain and the Fearsome Shade as well. The burst damage was immense. There's one replay coming up right here where you can see the Fearsome Shade gets thrown out after the portal comes through. It prevents Rikumeza from getting through this portal. By the time he actually comes through and is able to get into this fight, it's already a 2-on-1 very quickly, or a 3-on-2 very quickly became a 3-on-1 as a result. So just the ability of SK to recognize when Dynasty was trying to engage and then immediately using their own abilities to counteract that engage was just phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think K Volifier as well was a real highlight in some of those fights on that weapon kestrel. That fight especially, you could see him darting around, and he actually tweeted at the end of yesterday saying, like, their gameplay wasn't flawless, but overall they had a good first day. I think coming into day 2, their gameplay is getting closer and closer to flawless moving forward.
Yeah, that was very much an impressive game for them. I have a sneaking suspicion they will not be able to get Grace and Baptiste on the same composition again. Just a hunch, but
yeah, I think you might be right on that one, actually. I think that might not even be an SK thing. I think that's across the board. That's probably a no-go. But looking towards this draft then, aside from like Grace Baptiste, I don't want to harp on that topic too much. What else are we expecting to change about this draft? Like, is the weapon kestrel going to be allowed through?
Yeah, I mean, weapon kestrel is definitely something to think of, especially when you have Grace and a tanky front line that can kind of CC the opponent. So kestrel is someone that needs to be taken or banned if they're going to run with that double bruiser, the double CC comp, along with her amount of crit. I mean, she did 700, 800 crit. I mean, that's a ton of damage. And if you can't kill her and delete her right off the bat, you're going to lose every fight.
I mean, we saw at the end of the game, there was a one-shot, one-kill that hit Rikumeza through his reflex block for like 2/3 of his health.
Yeah, it was over 800 damage coming out on those ultimates. But at the same time, I don't think Kestrel is a pick that necessarily needs to be contested.
Okay.
It's just a matter of the Kestrel is very strong if you can protect her. So it's a pick that's why I like that it came in at the end of the draft, because they already knew, okay, we can protect this Kestrel, so we can go for this. We can go for this complete glass cannon build on her with no defense, and it works out. So
super powerful, but only in the right scenario.
I'm very surprised SK didn't first pick Grace.
I mean, they've gone for kind of the standard start to the draft that we've been seeing a lot in Europe, and Grace will be the counter pick. So the exact same start to the draft, except mirrored this time around.
Yeah, so now they're going to reverse the draft. So are they going to ban Koshka, Blackfeather, or Baptiste here? Depending on what Riku can play better, they're probably going to ban away the hero that he can't play as well. So if it's Baptiste and they want to take Koshka, that could work as well. So let's see what Dynasty is going to do here with their draft.
I'd like to see where they are going to choose to go with this one. Still a lot very much up in the air. Samuel going to be taken away. Ricky Meza not happy with his performance in the first game and not wanting to pick it up again.
This now leaves SK with a difficult choice because Blackfeather, Idris, Kashka, Batiste, all 4 of those are amazing. With the Grace, they can only ban away one of them, and they're going to have to let the other 3 through. So for SK, it's a matter of which one they don't want to deal with the most. I would very much like to see it be the Batiste, but they're going to take away the Idris. Maybe feeling like Dyansty doesn't play the Batiste?
Yeah, we just talked about this.
Yeah,
Grace
so-
Batiste getting through.
Although Batiste is a good pick here, Blackfeather's up. They're going to pick a CP Blackfeather. He's actually good into Batiste because he can out of the Ordained. He can also poke Batiste because of his range. Once he's level 8, he has a range 9 with his on point. So they're probably going to go with a CP Blackfeather here and potentially Kestro again if they want. So Kestro or Vox would be good in this situation.
So the Blackfeather will be the lock-in coming on through for the likes of Tyrus, or at least I would expect it to be Tyrus going on with the CP Blackfeather, as you mentioned. Tyrus definitely has been a standout player for SK Gaming. Fully expect him to do wonders on that Blackfeather, but we'll see how they're going to finish out this composition. And I mean, on the... Oh, they're actually going to take the Kestrel. I was about to say, on the side of Dynasty, you can easily finish this composition with a Kestrel. We just saw that success, but SK not going to allow that through.
Yeah, it's a pretty smart pickup here because Kestrel is one of the few carries that you will go with that absolutely no defense build with this composition. You know, most of the other carries can't really get away with it as well as Kestrel, who has a little bit of survivability and, you know, utility within her kit. But there are still plenty of options for the side of Dynasty. Maybe going for something like a Glaive. The lane Glaive could be really strong with this composition.
Yeah, lane Glaive or Vox would make the most sense here. PT Lamb has a phenomenal lane Glaive, and if he can get onto Kestro, get a nice afterburn with the Ordain, with the Grace, coming in there to CC, that would be a great combination. So they're going to go with the lane Glaive, and I really like this draft from Dynasty. So
Quite an aggressive draft from Dynasty as well. They really kind of want to like smash into these team fights and make an impact immediately. With a Glaive and a Grace, you're going to be diving onto this backline, and you've got to be a little bit nervous for the Kestrel in that scenario, right? Because you're going to be the target. That has to be played perfectly in these scenarios.
Yeah, and the Blackfeather is good into the Batiste and Grace because he has a lot of ways to ignore CC. I'm channeling...
You're copying me.
Doing my Munchables cosplay, apparently. But it's going to be very, very difficult for that Kestrel to survive anything in these fights. Even with the healing from Lyra, just there's so much burst and so much control on the side of Dynasty that I have to go with this draft.
Okay, so on the side of SK then, how did they play around this draft? Outside of just the Kestrel trying to survive, like what is the role of the other 2 members to try and protect the Kestrel?
yeah, well, they need to use the Lyra Borg at the right time. The Borg can actually stop an afterburn, so if Glaive is coming within range and they think he's going to engage, they can actually put the Borg up and stop the afterburn from happening. But that's more for predictions skill set there. And on top of that, Kestrel needs to active camo immediately when Glaive comes in. So like if Glaive lands the afterburn first before she can active camo, then she's in trouble because it's going to displace her. If she active camos and he misses the afterburn, then they can potentially win this game here.
All right, we'll see if they're going to be able to put it off. Definitely sounds like a lot of execution, but it's time to go into the game once again. Hashtag Vainglory is how you can get in touch with us on Twitter and let us know how you're feeling about these matches. But it's time to jump onto the Halcyon Fold and pass it over to our casters one more time.
And we're talking about the draft a little bit in that little break there, AJ, and I mentioned to you I really like this Glaive pick from PT Lamb because the Kestrel was the target consistently in the previous game of Dynasty to blow up, but with the fact that there was a Batiste and a Grace there to kind of stop the dive, it made things very difficult. Now you've taken those picks away, you have this Glaive to knock back the Kestrel, and if she does get knocked back, she's getting ordained. There's no escape.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting, although we have a bit of skirmish here. PT Lamb doing some good damage on the Cavalifar. But, you know, actually, are they going to be able to maybe go for a Trian here?
Okay, this is going to be a fight over Trian. Cavalifar gets it, so he's going to be feeling very happy about that, because not only does he get all the energy back from the Glimmer shots he threw, but he also gets health back, so this is actually not so successful. PT Lamb's going to be forced to go back. I wonder how hard Cavalifar is going to push this, or if he will just freeze it and
they
try
should
and
take
push.
Elder for sure here. Yeah,
so?
I feel like this is a good opportunity for SK to take Elder. If for some reason Dynasty had chosen not to like actually back and fully heal, would have been a decent opportunity to maybe even go for an invade. But SK do I believe. They're about to get that. Yep, nice job there. Mowgli is back here again, but I don't see them killing Tyrus, not with that Treant buff.
Well, the Ordain goes down. Tyrus is just going to stay inside of it. Mowgli's in a lot of trouble as he's just starting to take so much poke. Can Mowgli escape? Here comes PG Lamb. Nice afterburn gets him away, but Riku Meza is now going to be the target of the harass, and his Glimmer Shot's in on point. It's looking like first blood. It is. Kavalafar's going to find it. Very nice stuff from SK. A very big error coming out of Dynasty early.
When are teams going to learn? Fighting over the Treant's real risky. And, you know, we actually saw this exact thing yesterday where we had Blackfeather Lyra. Especially if they get the Treant heal, you literally cannot fight that. It's just not going to happen. So nice by SK to make the pick there. And originally, although we do have another fight developing, maybe.
Yeah,
Ordain.
It's going to be Tyra's just standing his ground. They're going to go for this Treant here. Mowgli gets rooted,
Get it.
but it is going to be Riku Meza getting it. This could actually be a kill, this time going over to Dynasty. It's all about who gets that healing from the Treant, and with Tyra's picking it up, then I just don't see him escaping. Gets the movement speed. Riku Meza will pop the Ordain down, and that will be Tyra's going out. Can they get more is the question. Oh, they take away that Treant from Kavalafa trying to steal it away. They're going to go for Raph here, and I don't think he escapes. Knock up, and that's going to be Raph going down. A double kill comes out for Dynasty, really turning this one on its head. Kavalafa has to be very careful here, but he does have Tyros coming in, and this could just be another overstay. This is going to be the seesaw starting. The Ordained will hold them up, but Mowgli will lose his life. Can PG Lamb get a return? He can! Tyros now are going to be under fire. It's the consistent fighting. EU, man, really wanting to get their early game fights on right now, and it's not going to end yet, JJ. It's practically just a battle royale at this point, but it looks like Dynasty are finally going to give up the harass.
I almost went AFK there for a bit. You know, you're doing the play-by-play. I figured I'd just come back after the game was over because these fights just keep happening. Dyansty, I had a point I was going to make literally in the intro that I have not been able to get to yet. Whatever, doesn't matter. SK, they're on the Elder Treant again. I like the fact that they're picking this up on the, you know, the spawn pretty much here. Able to keep in a good spot. Kavalafa does get taken very low in the lane. The Glaive doing Glaive things, able to dive buddy with that Grace very effectively too. Okay, right. I can make this point and it flows naturally.
Go for it.
No, it's way later than I wanted to make it. All right. So what I was going to say is, you said last game, SK. This is a team with a really scary A-side draft. Tyrus, let me make this point. Let me make it.
He's not going to be like. Tyrus going down. AJ having an aneurysm as it happens.
Having a conniption. Come on, I'm done. I'm done. All right, look, SK, they got a great A-side draft. You made that point. But you're forgetting, or maybe you didn't forget, you just didn't say it, that Dynasty had a great B-side draft yesterday. That I didn't think was a great draft, but it was a great draft, right? So, in actual fact, they've done something kind of similar here, where they have the Grace and someone who can dive with her and a lot of damage. It's not dissimilar to their Koshka comp, except maybe in, like, I guess when it spikes a little bit. And how consistently they're able to go in together. So Dynasty, they've been able to keep good pressure on this game, and the constant fighting is working for them. And I actually spoke to Mowgli on Twitter through DMs yesterday after that game, which we were talking about. And I said, you know, okay, explain this to me a little bit, because I feel like there's good enough kite ability on the enemy team, it's not going to work. He was like, we just didn't do a good enough job early game to apply pressure. Well, this game, very different story, as you can tell by my level of irateness.
And I want to talk about farm just a little bit, because SK, they did something clever at the beginning of the game, which is kind of hard to talk about. Kavalafa froze the lane very close to his turret to try and prevent PT Lamb from getting any CS. Now, what ended up happening was Dynasty forced a fight, then forced Kavalafa out of the lane, and then PT Lamb just got to farm all of this farm that Kavalafa was trying to deny him. And then because Kavalafa was forced to deal with the jungle invades that Dynasty was putting out, Dynasty completely reversed the farm counts. It would have been a really big farm deficit for PT Lamb if Kavalafa was allowed to do what he wanted to do with the freeze. But instead, Dynasty, by making moves across the map and forcing that movements from Kavalafa, have turned this around. Oh god! That was a lot of damage, and that's going to be Kavalafa, his second death, considering that this Glaive is probably going to be the end of a Kestrel for the entire game.
Yeah, and in the early turret pickup easily here for Dynasty, Riku even just tanking it up because they know they've got the damage for it. Last game, we were talking about the fact that, you know, the Lyra wasn't necessarily going to be a great pick for Dynasty because they needed more bursty healing to interact with how quickly they were going to get taken down by SK. Well, this game, it's even more to that extent. Like this Lyra, how do you make a fight work for yourself? How do you heal through a Glaive and a Grace jumping on you, and Baptiste hitting you for ridiculous burst damage with a bad mojo, right? Like, it's ridiculous. It's very hard for Lyra to be effective here.
Yeah, you're going to struggle completely because Lyra wants to be able to heal in segments unless we see Raph just scale HP to try and really up the heals that come out, then it's going to be difficult. Mowgli, he's setting up here. They're looking for another engage, but it's going to be shut down by SK. SK are starting to realize that they have to move around the jungle as a 3 because of this early aggression Dynasty have been able to output. A 2,000 gold lead, and they're pushing this wave in. It's going to open up the opportunity to go for a gold mine for Dynasty if they do enough job, or at least threaten a gold mine, which could force another fight. And SK, I don't think are ready for that.
I think Dynasty can do whatever they want right now, Dyansty. If they want to go for the gold mine, sure, you know, why not? But we just saw Poison Shiv and Infusion picked up for PT Lamb. I think they want kills. Could be wrong, but that certainly seems like a strong indicator that they want to actually go for a more explosive play than just something like taking away a gold miner. SK, they're really on the back foot. They got to play together. They got to make sure Lyra is there to throw down the heal immediately on whoever gets engaged on. People need reflex blocks on SK too, right? Like, you need to be able to deal with Glaive's repositioning. That's a really big one. They don't even have a single reflex block on their team yet, so they can't miss position at all.
Raph is going to spot this out, but he might just lose his life in the process. Look at the damage that comes out. That's the Ordain trapping him up, and Raph goes down. No fountain used, and Kefalafar now, he won't be able to escape. This is 2 kills, looking like 3. It's an ace for Dynasty, and that's what I was talking about. They want to bait SK into areas where they will fight. Not only do they get their cake, AJ, but as much as I hate this analogy, they get to eat it too.
GG next. Let's move on. I honestly don't see SK coming back here. They're really going to need to make a big play, or Dynasty is going to need to overextend somehow. The problem is, it's hard to overextend where no dive is too far. Right? Like, they can just go for it. They got Grace Heal.
They turn around now and they look for the fight. This is what Dynasty need to do, but instead Rikomez is going to be targeted. This is perhaps a little bit too late. Rikomez is going to go down. What can PT Lamb do is the question. We can take out Tyrus for one. Will they go further? No, they're going to just go and take the backs instead. Who needs kills when you can just deny gold from your opponents is what Dynasty stay here. And if SK step out of line, then they lose their lives anyway.
I don't understand why Dynasty didn't commit to that fight quicker. I think the only reason Rikomeza died is they had not decided they were going to fight that straight away. He was not actually getting many basic attacks in. He was kind of trying to walk back, and then Grace committed to the heal, and they realized they were actually going to be going for the fight. It was a little uncoordinated from Dynasty. So let's put it this way. SK does have an avenue back into this game. It's fights like that. But, you know, we've only seen one of those. I think Dynasty will tighten up after that has finished up and be able to do quite well here. It's around 9 minutes into this game. There's 9 kills on Dynasty. They're really pushing the tempo, but they need to keep doing that for sure.
They cannot really let the pressure go here. It was kind of the criticism we had off air, AJ, of Dynasty was their lack of decisiveness to just turn around and fight. Well, I think that's something that's going to be huge for this composition. Crystal Miner, Sentry getting involved here. Dynasty will want to try and take it, but they don't want to necessarily fight for it at this point unless someone mispositions and PT Lamb can land an afterburn. They're going to go in for it. There it is. It's Kestrel singled out, but PT Lamb will not find the kill. Instead turns onto Tyrus, picks up the Crystal Sentry, and Mowgli going to look to chase even further. Dynasty, they're just in position to finish this one up nicely as Mowgli does get stunned up, but here comes the rest of the gang, and this turret's going to be a very hard objective to hold on to.
Feels like Rikomeza is not really doing as much damage as you'd expect him to be at this point. Going for the early clockwork is kind of interesting. I'm not sure I totally agree. It's something which, in a later game,
look at the shielding.
Effective. Shielding?
Like, why would you build Pierce at this point? Like, Broken Myth would be your other item. Why would you build Pierce when there's only one shielding item on the enemy team?
Yeah, I mean, very good point. But something like a Frostburn, even picked up by Rikumeza, I think could have been very effective. It really would have been able to let PT Lamb stick to the targets. It would have let Rikumeza kite the Black Feather a little bit better. Going for the Clockwork schemes, I don't know. I feel like it's incorrect because it's very focused on like, okay, if we're gonna have a longer fight, I get more rotations off, or if we're gonna try and poke, I can be a little bit more effective there. And these fights they just end quick, right? Like Dynasty has a Glaive and a Grace to follow up. They're not trying to fight a long fight. If they're fighting a long fight, that's when Black Feather sustains through it. That's when Lyra is effective. That's when Kvalifar gets another active camo off. Like, just commit to burst is, I think, the game plan here. Unless Dynasty thinks they can't push for win quickly enough.
So the theory behind Clockwork on Batiste is that you want to get as many bad mojos off during his passive open window. So once you hit 4 auto attacks, you get your passive unlocked, and then the bad mojos, the damage on that is amplified. So if you can throw out more bad mojos during that period of time, then the burst damage is there. So I assume Rikumeza is just not wanting to stray off the normal path as far as builds are
That's
concerned
exactly
there.
it, though, right? Like I totally appreciate Clockwork being the norm, and it makes sense in most instances. But in this game, they do need to push the tempo and end more quickly than a normal Batiste game. Like Batiste is great late game, but he's also really great early and mid game. He's just great all over right now. And if you're pairing him with the Glaive, like especially this weapon power one, who later on is just going to die very quickly to Kestrel, you do need to have the ability to kill people fast. Right now, though, things have slowed down a little bit. Let's take a step back and look at things overall. Dynasty, they are continuing to farm very effectively. They're taking some of the back camps, and the Sentry has been eliminated already at 13 minutes. But in terms of the actual pressure and kills, not going quite as fast. I like that flare. That's nice by Mowgli. He's baiting a little bit. He's trying to make something happen.
Look at the positioning of SK. Everyone is pushed up so far. That Scout Trap hasn't noticed them. They're going straight on to Tyrus here, looking for the... Oh, Snare's going to trap him. They're going fourth. They're looking for Kvalifar next, and they're going to dive forward, take Tyrus, and Kvalifar's going to go down, it seems, to PT Lamb. An ace for Dynasty. And things may have slowed down, AJ, but that just baited SK into a false sense of security.
Really nice use of the flare there, just to make the side of SK think, all right, they're probably not that close. There are quick respawns at this stage in the game, though, so committing for a win, this could be a mistake if they're not careful. They've got to divide attention between the turrets, try and get them both down. That's going to be them falling.
And they fight to finish the game. It looks like this Vein Crystal's going down. PT Lamb loses his life. Rikumeza needs to land the damage. Has he got it? No, he doesn't. Mowgli, last man there standing. He's going to go for it. He's a tanky old Grace, and the Grace is not tanky enough. SK, 33 HP. The meme that is SK and Vein Crystals. But this time it's them, the ones who are surviving on the inch that is that health bar.
Man, I hope Dynasty don't end up hitting themselves for that, right? Because that could be the turning point. We're getting a gold mine now in SK. They got shut down gold all over the shop. Yeah, they're still at a pretty big deficit, but someone like Black Feather gets more per gold spent than a lot of heroes. They do have some options for going for a backdoor. Someone like a Glaive, especially a weapon power Glaive, can perhaps sneak his way down the bottom side of the map after burn over. But, now they've got item spikes. Kvalifar's got a Tyrant's Monocle. I don't blame him for trying, though. I mean, when it's that close, it's really worth giving it a shot. Now that we're getting towards the later stages of the game, I think that certain other elements of these compositions come into play. I think especially this Black Feather, right? Like, if SK can get good vision down, and to be honest, it should be easy, right? Because the vision is going to be around the base at this point. That's where they're fighting. If they can get good vision down and find some poke onto Dynasty, they have windows here to make fights happen.
Look at this. PT Lamb's getting ready. They're going on to Raft. That's a portal, an entry into the base if PT Lamb wants to follow it and save his afterburn. It's not going to go for it just yet. They're trying to spot out PT Lamb, but they didn't know he's waiting on the other side of the wall, and Raft surely going to spot him out now. There it is, afterburn over, they're going straight on in. Fearsome Shade captures a couple, but PT Lamb's going to lose his life very quickly. They need a fountain to save him, but I think they've done it this time. Yeah, they have. Rikumeza will be able to finish the job. PT Lamb, the distraction necessary. And like you mentioned, I don't mind Dynasty going for a try there, AJ. It shows that these European teams are becoming more confident in their ability to execute games quicker.
Yeah, that was a really solid comp coming out of Dynasty. They showed a similar B-side draft to what they had yesterday. Now they're going back to A-side. You know, they got to show something there too, but this is definitely a strong point of this team.
Yeah, I don't remember the last time a European game ended without a Kraken taken. So that is huge for Dynasty. Moving into Game 3, they've got tempo and momentum. Let's see if it's enough to carry them on through.
We will have to see if that is going to be enough for them going on into the third game of the series. And who would have thought it? Grace Batiste won a game. I'm personally really surprised. But what I want to talk about is the fact that this is a very different Grace Batiste comp to how SK won with it.
Yeah, I mean, SK's composition was very much a more defensive Grace Batiste comp, where it was wait for them to try and engage on us and then heal up the Kestrel once she took some damage, but blow them up in the process. This composition from Dynasty was the Grace Batiste, but with a glaive, so it was much more aggressive. It was send the glaive diving into the opposition, let him soak up some damage while we're bursting them, and then heal up the glaive after he's, in the thick of things for a little while. It's essentially very similar in terms of the playstyle, which is have one target be the target that your opponents are going to be going after, heal them up, and just burst them down. But just very different ways of achieving that victory.
Yeah, and the fights were so good here. You can see that when PTM is diving, the fear comes right behind him and just basically disables the carries. And every time he does, like another fear comes out, and then PTM afterburns in here. Just beautiful combos coming from Dynasty. They knew exactly what they needed to do to win. And PT Lam on Glaive, I mean, I don't think he missed one afterburn. And he was ahead like almost 40 plus CS over Kvalifar in this game, and they just basically snowballed it really well. So, like I said, PT Lam on Glaive last weekend, he just performed so well. And Grace Batiste, that's a combo you do not want to face in jungler here.
Yeah, and now it's a really weird situation for the next draft because you kind of want to ban PT Lam's Glaive at this point. Like, he's so consistently dominating on that hero that there is a lot of things that you want to ban against this team that you don't get the option to ban as many things as you would like.
Yeah, but at the same time, this was sort of self-inflicted by SK. They know how strong Grace Batiste is. They literally just ran it, and then they allowed their opposition to pick it up. I don't know if they were trying to flex on them and be like, oh, you guys can have that super strong comp. We can still beat you, but they learned the hard way that no, you can't. That is such a strong comp. You just cannot let that go through.
Yeah, and like, I mean, we just saw the statistic there. Batiste actually having less than 50% win rate so far, but certainly when you're alongside a Grace and there's that extra lockdown, that extra slow, so you can consistently get the bad mojos out and wait for your ordained cooldown, suddenly he comes into a whole other category of power.
I also almost feel like that less than 50% win rate is a little bit misleading, because in North America, we've seen a lot of the Batiste that does come through is when a really strong team lets it through against a team that is arguably very much weaker than them, and they know that they can deal with it. So it's a little bit misleading this early on in the season.
Yeah, and that's part of it as well, is the fact that we are still quite early in the season. The stats are always going to be, you need to take them with a little pinch of salt until there are more games and more examples of what's been happening. But now looking towards this next game, Suijay, how are you anticipating this draft kind of shaping up? Because we've seen two drafts that were pretty similar. Like, surely the B-side can't just get Grace Batiste again.
Yeah, I feel like Batiste and Glaive are going to be the highly contested draft here. Maybe they'll switch it up. Maybe they won't ban Baron, or they won't ban Grump John or let it through. But I feel like Grace with Batiste is really strong. The Lyra first pick, it's got to change. Both teams have lost with the Lyra first pick.
Just take the Grace as your first pick.
Tell you guys, Lyra is not that strong, and she can be countered. Even, she used to be meta, but now she's starting to fall off because of these new compositions that come out with Grace.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's not that Lyra's not strong. It's not that Lyra's a bad hero. It's that when you're against something that can engage as hard as a Grace can and can give your team the sustain while also offering the team fight prowess, it's like suddenly Lyra's sustain seems to pale in comparison.
Yeah, Grace is just a better pick right now than Lyra in most situations. And so Grace is, I'm predicting that she will be getting hit fairly heavily with the next update that comes out, but I expect a lot of teams to really start putting some bans or focusing their first picks onto her.
Yeah.
There we go.
They're going to switch it up. They're going to take Grace instead of Lyra this time. I think this is really smart. And again, I don't know, EU is behind or what, but Vox is good into Grace. I don't know why no one is picking Vox or playing Vox into Grace. It's like last weekend when they're like or yesterday, like no one was playing Grace. Like what's going on with EU except for one team that played a captain and carry Grace. But let's see what S is gonna decide to do here. I think for them, you know, banning taking Samuel, banning Glaive would be a good option here. I think they definitely need to ban Glaive if they're not gonna play it.
Well, Samuel has been locked in for SK, so that's going to go into the hands of Tyrus. We saw how strong he was on that Samuel yesterday, but having that Samuel locked in already would generally mean you're not looking to get the Batiste. So surely with this ban,
they have to ban it.
You have to get rid of that.
They absolutely have to ban it. If they don't ban the they're okay.
Unless they want to pick it, and this is like a lane Samuel or something, or Captain Batiste.
It could be Captain Batiste, something along those lines, but if they don't pick Batiste, they are literally asking to lose.
Yeah, I think Dynasty's going to ban Lyra here because Lyra and Samuel is a very strong combo together. So I do see a Lyra ban, and that'll probably force Raph to play Arden, which he's actually very comfortable on. So I could see that happening in the draft here. So let's see how it's going to play out.
Definitely a few ways that it could play out. We have Mowgli statistics there, 4.31 KDA. That's a pretty nice little KDA, especially as a captain. But definitely, you can already see Grace starting to sneak into the top 3 heroes for some of these players. Obviously, this is season-specific statistics. So, but Dynasty, with Grace locked in, looking in a great spot in this draft, but taking a long time for this ban. They know how much importance rests on this single ban.
They're going to ban Arden against Raph, and they're going to deny Raph that Arden because, like I said, in the games that they have done well, Raph was on Arden or Grace.
There is the Batiste
okay.
locked in.
So very likely, this is either a double crystal or it's the Captain Batiste. I would assume they're going to go Captain Batiste.
Most likely here.
But I like that pick. You have to take it away from her. You cannot let Batiste Grace go through.
So now, if you're Dynasty, like, how do you react to this pick? Because this might be something they weren't really expecting.
I have to feel that they were expecting it. That was why they took so long on the previous ban, was probably debating, do we ban away the Batiste or do we think they might run it as a captain? And I think they thought, okay, they might run it as a captain, but we have to take the chance and let it through just in case they don't and we can take it. So I would assume they have an idea in mind for it.
All right, well, Idris is going to be the first pick. What are you thinking for the second
They
pick,
can do
Sujay?
potentially Koshka here and really just snowball the early game against a Captain Batiste and a Samuel. That's not going to do much against a Koshka Grace combination. That could work really well. They could go for Taka or actually go for Scarf. So they're going to play the range game here, which is very interesting. So Batiste is countered by range. However, Samuel, a well-played Samuel like Tyrus can outplay a Scarf. So it's going to be a really skilled matchup here in jungle.
It's going to be an This is going to be a much more even game, I think. Yeah. When we're looking at how these compositions are starting to unfold, definitely feels like there's a lot more on the line here, and it's not just going to be Batiste Grace running away with things. Now that they're going to be going against each other in the same role as well, I feel like they're almost rivals at this point.
Yeah, Glaive is still open. They may pick up lane Glaive here potentially, or even go with Vox. Vox could be potential pick here, or Kestrel again.
Blackfeather, Kestrel, there's a lot of these picks can work, and we know that Kvalifar plays a large variety of heroes too.
Yeah, so Glaive going against PT Lam as well. This is a little bit like throwing down the gauntlet, saying, hey, you think you've got a good Glaive? Let me show you how it's done. We'll see if that is going to be the case, but what are we thinking about these two compositions then? Let's start with Dynasty. What's kind of the play style here? Because this is a very different composition to what we saw from them last game.
It's very different, but it's still a very effective composition. They have a lot of... It's a mixture, kind of the two winning compositions that we've seen this series. They have a lot of that dive and go in with the Grace being there to heal up the Idris. They also have a lot of, okay, if stay back, let Scarf deal damage. If they jump onto Scarf, then have the Grace try and heal that. So they just need to make sure that while they do have both facets, they need to adapt to the way that SK is going to be playing, because if they try and do both, if they try and have Idris charge in and you use the Grace to protect the Idris, then they won't have that protection for if SK engages onto them.
So quite a reactive composition then. What are you expecting out of SK then with their comp?
I think SK, the Scarf pick was really weird because the Samuel Sleep and the Fearsome Shade from Batiste can cancel that ultimate. And also can cancel Grace ultimate as well. So as long as SK plays this properly, they can definitely win this matchup for sure. But early game, I feel like with Grace, they have a stronger early game.
Okay, we'll see if they can abuse that power spike that they're going to have. Let us know whether you guys have been abusing your Grace power spikes in solo queue using the hashtag Vainglory8. But more importantly, let us know who you're cheering for at home. But without further ado, it's time to get into the third game of this series and find out who will move on into our finals.
I've used my Grace power spikes at least 3 times now, so see if you guys can beat that one in on Twitter. But we had a chat about this draft. I shouted that Dynasty should have gone for a glaive Scarf, and as I say, that they lock in Idris Scarf. So I feel like now with the glaive on the side of SK, that's kind of opened themselves up to perhaps being having this Scarf blown up upon.
This seems very risky to me, right? Like this composition that's coming out of Dynasty. There are a lot of scenarios that could play out in fights where Scarf just isn't effective. And on top of that, I think that PT Lamb could struggle in some of these earlier game fights with the glaive and the Batiste. It's going to be a lot about Mowgli. I think, you know, where he decides to put his attention in fights is critical, because you sort of, to an extent, want to be pressuring that Samuel, right? Like, one of Grace's super strong points is the ability to be very threatening on the back line of your opponents. But at the same time, her counterpoint, strong point, is that, you know, if someone jumps in, you're able to disengage very effectively with something like your B ability. So, I don't know, I think it's definitely not easy to play these fights well, but Mowgli is a good Grace player. We've seen that at this point.
Yep.
He should be able to make it work. A player is reconnecting real quick, I believe, by the way. Shouldn't be too much of an issue. Dyansty, we haven't seen a lot of Captain Batiste, so I think it's worth mentioning, you know, this is an interesting pick. It does have a lot of utility, and actually, it still does respectable damage, because they tend to pick up a bit of Crystal Power, and they have an Empowerment on their perk.
So that would be a really interesting point to talk about. But if you look at the people, Captain. Yeah, it's Raph on this glaive, which was actually unexpected. I expected it to be Kvalifar on glaive, Tyrez on Samuel, and then Raph on the Batiste, as did you. It seems like then you have melee laner for Kvalifar, you have Tyrez on his famous Samuel. So very peculiar setup with the heroes.
So, all right, Raph taking the damage here. What's going on is actually kind of interesting, and I actually kind of like it. But I'm a big fan of whoa.
Oh wow, Mowgli.
Whoa.
What?
Whoa.
Okay, if he stole that would have been huge. I think he would have actually, you know, killed Tyrus straight off the bat. 100%. Yeah. Now he's just going to lead him on a goose chase whilst Rukameza attempts to take the central tree, and Raph in a good position to stop it. Mowgli's still running. Mowgli could just come up from behind. Raph's really going to have to stop this one.
If
Tyrus, he's not going to spot him. Mowgli's back. He made it out. What a god, Mowgli. Almost still in it, but man.
Okay, all right. We gotta sidetrack. We gotta talk about this Kvalifar build, right?
Yeah.
Weapon Samuel. Kvalifar is my man. I love this
It is Weapon
stuff.
Samuel.
I love this stuff. Weapon Samuel is ridiculous in lane. Like, at least in the first couple of levels. Really, really, like, almost dumb. Right? Like, very strong. The harassment's insane. Corrupted Genius does a lot of work, too. That sets up really nicely for Raph to come in for ganks. You can see it here. Doesn't actually find the knock back, though, towards Kvalifar. But, you know, you have good wave clear, just by virtue of base damage and things like Drifting Dark plus Malice and Verdict. So you can push very heavily, and then you sustain back up because you're able to constantly find, you know, value in trading your Corrupted Genius for maybe a basic attack of your opponent. You know, it's not like if you're playing Crystal, where sometimes you move up and you feel like, okay, I'm going to Corrupted Genius this person, but they're going to Spitfire me and I lose that trade. This is very different. You go up, you Corrupted Genius, and you also deal a bunch of weapon damage with that basic. So it's actually pretty effective, but as we get to later stages of the game, this falls off a cliff. It gets really rough for Weapon Power Samuel late game. So there's a timer here for SK Gaming.
Everything that I thought I knew, AJ, has disappeared from my mind, which is incredible. I actually severely favored SK's draft to win, but now that I've seen the way they want to orient their heroes, I just don't see a way how Dynasty lose this game.
It's funny because I feel the exact opposite, but for all the wrong reasons.
Okay, well, we are going to see Rukameza caught in an Ordained, but no follow-up from Raph there. Dynasty keeping ahead in gold due to the goose hunt that was Tyra's chasing Mowgli around early allowed Rickomeza just to pull ahead a little bit, and there is some CC discrepancies in the lane, nothing really to talk about. SK though, looking to invade, and this is how they snowballed their lead early last game. Rickomeza does spot Raph out. That's going to be a aftershock, not quite trapping him, but he needs the rest of his team to come soon. He doesn't want to lose too much.
I think SK needs to be a bit more proactive in their rotations. Kvalifar started making his way down. I think he should have committed to that and maybe gone for real pressure here. He's not able to out-farm PT Lamb when PT Lamb's getting assistance, right? PT Lamb actually got them. So
Yeah.
Kvalifar needs to utilize his early game power as that weapon Samuel and actually go for kills, maybe gold mines. Treant is already gone. I think that's actually one thing SK already made a mistake on. Like, they did not pressure Treant effectively with their early game power. And I think that's a huge mistake when you're against Jungle Scarf that's kind of slow to get rolling, and you have a weapon Samuel. You gotta go for things like that Treant early.
This is my first weapon Samuel, by the way, AJ. So
It's all right. I'm sure Kvalifar will be gentle.
I've witnessed Flash X play Samuel in the captain position for TSM, which I thought was interesting to say the least. And I am very much saying the least. But with Weapon Power Samuel, there's definitely the opportunity to use that Corrupted Genius and the Tension Bow to really try and snowball a lead in the lane. I can definitely understand the theory, but like you mentioned, it is a ticking time bomb. And
Look at that!
That is disgusting. SK are actually they're snowballing a lead here. They're definitely making one at the moment. I wonder if they can continue it, because this turret is going to be under huge fire. PT Lamb does not have a Lyra this game round to sustain him under turret, and Grace is so far away from hitting that Divine Intervention.
SK needs to go faster, though. They really do. Raph, he's trying to make it happen, but it's difficult when you're forcing them onto the turret. Here comes the Ordained.
PT Lamb's dead. Yeah, there it is. Lovely use of it of the fearsome shade, and there's first blood for the Weapon Power Samuel. Kvalifar bringing it to us in 2.6. in the summer season. They're going to try and put the pressure onto this turret. I wonder how much they can get, or if they just find a kill onto Mowgli, or SK decide to prioritize. It is going to be the afterburn not connecting. Dragon's Breath going to be charging on up, trying to push everyone back, but it just doesn't do much damage at level 1, especially without a broken myth. Might just do enough to push SK back, but they're just going to walk straight into the jungle and look to steal way more.
SK is playing this composition right in the sense that they are pressuring, but I do think they could commit harder. As I said before, let's talk about what Dynasty needs to do, though. You know, it's basically, okay, let's play a Scarf comp. Let's stay in this game until I really start to spike. It is a bit different, though, because Scarf is in the jungle. A lot of you guys in your solo queue games, at the very least, probably don't see this too frequently. Scarf is more of a laner. The advantage is that you hit your level spikes quicker, right? And as a Crystal carry, you do gain a lot per ability level up. You know, your base damage increases a decent amount. Especially for your ultimate, the jumps every time you level that are quite huge. But it is going to take him longer to get equivalently strong to a lane start. And that's because gold ultimately does matter a great deal too. PT Lamb is the one who's going to, I think, bridge the gap. You know, he's got to be effective in the mid game. So I like that he's gone for the Sara Blade. He's not trying to go for a slower build. You know, he's trying to make sure he can do good damage here.
Okay. I want to see Tension Bow second item from PT Lamb. I know Poison Shiv typically is what PT Lamb favors, but okay. And that, you know, that's the reason I want to see Poison Shiv, because if sorry, not Poison Shiv, Tension Bow, because if Dynasty can do that consistently throughout this game, then this early game power spike that Weapon Power Samuel has becomes useless. And SK, their whole idea of kind of surprising Dynasty and trying to win game early becomes so much harder.
Yeah, I mean, that was also a sort of map misplay from SK, though. Let's talk about what just went wrong there. There's not a good reason why SK shouldn't be together. Because if they lose this game if it goes to 15 minutes. Most of the time. Like, they need to find windows early. I mean, Tyrus has got a Shatter Glass here. They've got good burst damage. They can pick people easily. Mowgli's not even level 6. You still don't have Grace Heal. Start pressuring things. Start pressuring turrets. Start going for gold mine. Start invading his 3. Right now, it's too slow. Ref's trying to change that.
Yeah, and there's not enough damage to kill PT Lamb. Now that Divine Intervention is there, the synergy with Idris is so huge. They're going to look to try and pressure SK out as they bring Rickomeza into the lane. Tyrus is there. He is currently lurking. The Raph is going to go back here, which means their Fountain has just gone back to base. And there might be an opportunity to really pick someone up here if Dynasty wanted it. They're going to go in. Tyra's just about gets out of the B there from the Grace. And SK going to be fairly content in now sieging this turret again.
Alright, so Mowgli does not have his heal up for 20 seconds. This is definitely a window. He's actually spamming it to his team there. Here comes the engage.
Yeah, PT Lamb not the target. There's Dragon Breath going out. Oh, the Fear shuts it down from Tyra's. That's a huge ultimate just put away there, but Divine Intervention's up in 5 seconds. Raph is trying to hit Rikumeza every time with these afterburns, but PT Lamb is just kind of standing on top of him to make sure that he can try and body block the ability, because PT Lamb has his Shroud Step to blink away, or a Shimmer Strike if necessary, if things get too dicey. So every time Raph misses an afterburn onto Rikumeza, it feels like SK are not going to really find a kill.
This might already be too slow. I know earlier I was saying like 15 minutes, but after watching that fight unfold, the damage is not really what it needs to be from SK Gaming. It obviously helps a lot that Dynasty is fighting under turret, but that just speaks to Dynasty playing this matchup correctly. They are really, anchoring themselves on objectives that they control that can keep them relatively safe. They're not trying to turn these fights around and commit necessarily, which is very smart. Mowgli can afford to do that kind of move because he's pretty tanky, but Dynasty, they're not pushing this too far. They're just
well,
waiting.
They need to fight now or they lose their turret. Kavalafa gets hit by a Dragon's Breath and PT Lamb gets healed back up to full. Dynasty, their turret is very low, but they have the range advantage at this point with this Scarf and they need to be abusing it. Mowgli goes in, the Ordained will stop him from escaping quickly, but the damage is there and Kavalafa's not in that Drifting Dark, so there's just not much damage on those Miles and Verdicts since he's gone Weapon Power. Can Dynasty push this turret? The minion wave is going to be coming back. They have Goop as well. The Spitfire Goop combination does so much to the objectives.
Yeah, it's really strong damage, things like that turret. With Tyrus backing up, I do think that SK can go in.
Kavalafa is dead. Just like that, he goes down, and now it's going to be Raph turned upon. That's going to be a Fearsome Shade, putting Mowgli out of the fight, but Tyrus will just go down. It's a triple kill coming through the PT Lamb, and the turret will be taken as well. This is Dynasty, I think, finding out that Weapon Power Samuel is strong, maybe 1 to 6, and then after it drops off.
Yeah, I mean, they just needed to go quicker this game. It is good. If they'd played at the same pace they did last game, this, I think, would have looked different. But SK, as it currently stands, are definitely going a bit too slow. Mowgli has hit a point where he's so tanky that someone like Kavalafa can't do respectable damage to him anymore. Mowgli can just go in, buy time for his team. Scarf has now got the Frostburn, so any commitment is hard. Mowgli will get caught here, most likely. Maybe not.
Catch Grace. There's no such thing as catching Grace.
Certainly seems that way. Alright, so let's see. Can Kavalafa and SK push this turret?
They
might be able to get this turret.
Is the only one there. He's going to try and burn the minion wave down with a Goop, but I think they just focus the turret in, yeah. Instant death.
So that was a bit
Dynasty,
of a
give it up.
misrotation from Dynasty. PT Lamb backed super hard. He could have ran by the shop when he backed initially, and then sort of maybe gone for his front train or something like that, but he decided to recall all the way, and as a result, Mowgli had no backup, and they weren't able to contest that initial chase from SK. That led into only Rikumeza being near the turret. So I would definitely say the way that tactically Dynasty played that retreat was not necessarily optimal, but I also don't think they really care about losing the turret. Obviously you'd rather not, but what is SK going to do with that? It's pretty hard for them to make plays right now.
When you have a late game composition and an early game composition, 1,000 gold. Okay, never mind. That is just Kavalafa going down. Oblivion puts them to sleep, but PT Lamb is just being directed straight towards Raph with that fear, and he's going to take Raph out in her heartbeat. When a late game composition is 1,000 gold ahead of an early game composition, then the gold lead is not 1,000 AJ. It's more like 5,000 because the early game composition should have executed.
Yeah, and also some heroes just know how to spend their money a little bit better, right? Like Dynasty, every point of gold they got is going to be doing much more work, especially on someone like that Scarf. Now Mowgli could be a little too far here. Tyrus does some good slows. Never mind. He's got Fountain, and also Mowgli's base movement speed is kind of ridiculous with the tier 3 boots here. SK, they need to hunt someone down as Dynasty are on the retreat. But I'm not sure they have enough here, enough damage. Let's see.
It's going to be Mowgli focused in, but like you mentioned, fastest movement speed in the game. And actually, I think Batiste is one of the lowest. So when you have that kind of dynamic, it does provide for some comic as Mowgli kind of just vrooms out these monks' car.
Steal this.
Will he steal this? He's going to go for it. Oh, Bad Mojo just pokes it right down. They wait for it to become empowered and then blow it up. But now they just go for the engage, and Raph is going to be the target. Spitfire connects. They can continue chasing forward. That's going to be an ordained onto Mowgli, but he doesn't care. Feared, though, does a lot. But look at this. It's just Rikumeza burning away. He manages to block it up, and now they just need to turn it around. Fountain's been used. Wow, they've turned out. Can PT Lamb do the damage is the question. It's looking like he can. 1, 2, and looking for a third. It's going to be Tyra's taking a Spitfire to the face as PT Lamb waits for that Shroud Step to come back online. Energy's there. He jumps on forward. But I think Tyra's may have just bridged the gap. Those Bad Mojos are 60% slow. It's pretty insane. I don't know if Tyra should have gone for... Okay, yeah. That is close. That's a calculated right there. That's a hashtag calculated.
He's clenching real hard right now, Rikumeza. Oh, man. I'm actually kind of surprised Tyrus didn't try and pop him there. I would have gone for that. But, okay.
Because you can.
Let's talk about that. So, Kvalifar does need to be killed. Let's just highlight that for a second. Right?
Okay.
Like, Dynasty took a while turning on the person who needed the most pressure. Tyrus, he's going to be able to do good damage, you know, whether you jump on him or not, because he's good disengage. Kvalifar does not have good disengage. If you jump on him, he's dead. It's the point in the composition where this weapon Samuel does nothing if you decide to kill him, right? Does nothing. But if you don't decide to kill him, he's just a weapon carry. Like, weapon items are good. You could play any captain in the game, build a full weapon build, and you do respectable damage. That's just how it works. They multiply very effectively together. So the Dynasty's target focus needs to be Samuel, so that they just take him out of the map and it's 2 versus 3, and then you're fine. You know, because you got sustain, you're all okay.
With a Spitfire, a Goop, and a PT Lamb on Idris, it dies very quickly. Mowgli's also gone Contraption for the cooldown reduction on this Grace, so he can get even more disruption into a fight and get those heals back up. There he is, engaging in. Ordained once more used, but that just allows PT Lamb to charge forward. Look at Tyrus' health bar, it's ticking on down. He goes out in just a half a second. Rikumeza's burning everyone alive, and that's going to be a kill. And another going over to Rikumeza. The ace is easy for Dynasty as they march down the lane. 16 minutes in, they are looking to try and take down these turrets.
Yeah, at this point, with that previous fight they won, plus, just the way they scale, Dynasty can do whatever they want at this point, I think. They would need to really have a poor engagement to fail. Now they're onto these turrets. They might be able to get both here and just push for the win.
Yeah, they're going to go for that. There's Synergized Pops, and that's going to be the Vein Crystal melting. SK jumps in, but it's not enough, and that's going to be Dynasty taking down SK. I want to see Tasty Bacon's face, the failed fish coming out as he thinks about Weapon Samuel once more, because we know that Tasty Bacon is one of the largest lovers. Absolutely loves the hero, loves Weapon Power Samuel. So let's just throw it straight to Bacon's face so we can see how much he loved that game.
Well, we'll see. Bacon
I love that
doesn't actually
game.
seem too upset about the situation.
I absolutely love seeing Weapon Samuel get destroyed. So that game made me pretty happy.
Okay, why do you hate Weapon Samuel so much?
There's no reason for it. There is literally none. Like, at least with Grace, she has a little bit of weapon scaling in one of her abilities and her perk. There is 0 weapon scaling on Samuel whatsoever. So you are purely relying on the base numbers for his abilities, for everything. And then you're just a basic attack. Like, if you're going to build weapon, like, any hero can do the same amount of damage as Samuel weapon power just by building the weapon. Like, period. It's because there is no scaling whatsoever.
There's no extra benefit to building
like,
it.
Like Dyansty was saying, 1 through 6, it can do some good damage because he does have just high base damage numbers. But beyond that point, you do not scale into the mid game or the late game whatsoever. I don't understand this pick. I don't know why SK went for it. It's just so confusing to me because they